They said no man could be so cruel until the night Adekunle proved them wrong. Thunder split the sky as he forced his 7 months pregnant wife, Mirembe, out of their mansion and into the violent storm. Rain hammered against her trembling body, her arms wrapped around her belly as if shielding her unborn child from the betrayal that cut deeper than the cold. "Adekunle, please. Listen to me," she begged, voice breaking. But his eyes, once filled with love, burned with poisoned doubt. "I will not raise another man's child," he said, and the gate slammed shut between them like a verdict. Lightning flashed, revealing her soaked silhouette staggering away into the darkness. He didn't know it yet, but the moment she disappeared into that rain was the moment his entire destiny shattered, because years later she would return, holding a truth powerful enough to destroy or redeem him forever. Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you enjoy emotional African folktale dramas like this one, feel free to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters. Adekunle had always carried his pride like a crown, gleaming heavy and impossible to remove. To the world, he was the brilliant young mogul who rose from nothing to build an empire of real estate and steel. People bowed when he walked into a room. Investors fought for a seat at his table. Employees whispered stories of his sharp mind and even sharper temper. But none of them knew that beneath the expensive suits and commanding voice was a man easily wounded by suspicion and even more easily manipulated. The seed of doubt hadn't appeared on its own. It had been planted carefully, intentionally, by someone who wanted to see his world crumble. Sefu. Adekunle's cousin was the kind of man who smiled with his mouth but never with his eyes. He had grown up in the same household, eaten the same meals, shared the same roof, but never the same destiny. While Adekunle soared, Sefu stagnated, always watching from behind the shadow cast by his cousin's success. In his bitterness, admiration twisted into resentment, and resentment rotted into ambition. He wanted everything Adekunle had: the business, the influence, the respect, and most of all, Mirembe. She was the one thing Sefu could never touch, and that fact angered him more than anything else. It began subtly. "I saw something strange today," Sefu had said one evening while sitting with Adekunle in the luxurious private lounge of their office. "I wasn't going to mention it, but maybe you should keep an eye on your wife." Adekunle barely looked up from his glass of aged whiskey. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I'm not saying anything definite," Sefu replied, shrugging casually. "Just sometimes people aren't who they seem. Especially women who come from humble backgrounds." He let the insinuation hang in the air like smoke. Adekunle's jaw tightened. "Mirembe is loyal. That's what I thought too." Sefu offered a sympathetic smile, fake dripping with poison. "But I saw her speaking with a man near the market last week. Very closely, whispering." "That means nothing," Adekunle snapped. Sefu nodded slowly. "Of course. Probably nothing." Then he added softly, "But if the child isn't yours, it will be everything." Adekunle slammed the glass onto the table, the sound cracking like gunfire. "Enough." Sefu raised both hands in surrender, but the smirk he hid behind his lowered gaze said everything: the trap had been set. From that moment, doubt became a shadow that followed Adekunle everywhere. He tried to ignore it, tried to drown it, in work, in meetings, in business triumphs, but jealousy has a way of growing in silence, feeding on the imagination until it becomes a living thing. And the worst part was that Mirembe had no idea anything was wrong. She moved around their home with quiet grace, her pregnancy making her glow even in her simplest dresses. She would smile when Adekunle walked in, place her hand on her belly and say, "Your son is kicking again. He knows your voice." But instead of joy, Adekunle felt a cold, creeping fear coil around his heart. What if the child wasn't his? He didn't ask. He didn't confront. He simply watched her from afar, studying every move, every expression, every delay in her return from errands. His silence became distance. His distance became suspicion. His suspicion became anger. And anger always finds something to ignite it. The final blow came when Sefu brought him a small envelope. "I shouldn't have gotten involved," Sefu said with an expression of false reluctance. "But you're my brother. I can't watch someone humiliate you." Adekunle grabbed the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a photograph, fuzzy, taken from a distance, but clear enough to show Mirembe standing beside a man holding her belly, while the stranger touched her arm in a gesture that looked intimate. The man was a doctor, a simple routine checkup, but Sefu had cropped out the clinic sign, leaving only the frame that confirmed his lie. Adekunle stared at the photo for a long time, the image burning into his mind like a brand. "Why would she do this?" he whispered. Sefu sighed deeply. "I told you, Some women see wealth and opportunity. Loyalty is rare. Then he delivered the line he had been saving. And if the child isn't yours, she's probably preparing her escape. A vein pulsed on Adekunle's forehead. His heart hammered so loudly he could barely hear his own thoughts. It didn't matter that he'd never asked Mirembe the truth. It didn't matter that she had never given him a reason to doubt her. It didn't matter that he had once vowed to protect her at all costs. In that moment, all he saw was betrayal. That night he sat in their bedroom staring at the door as if expecting her to walk in, confessing her sins. When she finally entered humming softly to herself, he didn't see the woman he had married. He saw a liar. "Mirembe," he said coldly. She froze instantly. The tone of his voice frightened her. She set down the basket she was carrying. "Yes, love," Adekunle stood up slowly. "Where were you today? At the clinic. You know Thursdays are checkups. Don't lie to me," he roared. She flinched as though struck. "Adekunle, what's wrong? Why are you speaking to me like this?" He walked toward her with a fury she couldn't comprehend. "Tell me whose child you are carrying." Her mouth fell open in shock. "Whose child? Adekunle, it's yours. How could you even ask that?" "I saw the picture," he spat. "You sneaking around with some man." Whispering, touching, understanding, washed over her face, then heartbreak. "You think I would betray you? After everything we've built together, after everything we've survived." But he wasn't listening. Doubt had become conviction, and conviction had turned into cruelty. "You will not make a fool of me," he said. "Pack your things. Leave my house tonight." She stared at him, eyes wide, tears spilling freely. "I am 7 months pregnant. It's storming outside. Please, listen to me. I can explain." "There is nothing you can say," he answered coldly. "Take your lies and get out." Her legs trembled, her breath hitched. She clutched her belly as if trying to protect her child from his words. "Adekunle, please, don't do this to us. Get out," he repeated. He didn't touch her. He didn't raise a hand. But his words were sharper than a blade. Mirembe slowly walked toward the door, sobbing silently. When she reached the entrance, thunder cracked through the sky. Rain poured down like waves. The corridor wind howled as if the world itself was protesting her fate. She turned one last time. "I love you," she whispered, "even now." Adekunle said nothing. And with that, she stepped into the storm carrying her unborn child, her broken heart, and the last shred of hope she still held for the man she married. Behind her, without hesitation, Adekunle slammed the door shut. The storm swallowed Mirembe whole as she stumbled into the darkness, each drop of rain falling like a judgment from the sky. She pressed one arm to her belly, trying to shield her unborn child from the cold, while the other wiped futilely at her tears. Her heart felt as if it had cracked open under the weight of the unimaginable her husband. The man she trusted more than anyone in the world had chosen lies over love. But long before this catastrophic night, something else had been building, something Adekunle had never understood, something he never cared to question, because he believed he already knew everything. It began years earlier. When Mirembe first married into Adekunle's wealthy family, she had arrived with nothing but a suitcase, a humble smile, and a past she rarely spoke about. She was raised in a quiet lakeside community, the kind of place where kindness was currency and neighbors were family. She had met Adekunle during a charity event he sponsored, she as a volunteer, he as the proud benefactor who loved to be admired. What Adekunle never knew was that before that event, before she became the gentle woman who softened his hardened world, Mirembe had once saved a life, Seifu's life. Years ago, when Mirembe lived in her small village, Seifu had visited for business dealings on behalf of Adekunle. On his way back, his driver lost control on a muddy road, and the vehicle flipped into a ditch. People were terrified to approach, but she didn't hesitate. She climbed down, pulled him from the wreckage, and kept pressure on his wounds until help arrived. Seifu survived because of her. But when he woke in the clinic and saw her, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Not gratitude, but desire mixed with resentment. He thanked her outwardly, but inside he hated that someone so ordinary had saved him. He hated that she looked at him with compassion rather than admiration. He hated that she knew him at his most vulnerable. And when he discovered months later that the woman who saved him had married his cousin, the man who had everything he ever wanted, his hatred sharpened into something toxic. So he started weaving his plan. He began by visiting their home more often, offering help Adekunle didn't need, showing support no one asked for, and always watching Mirembe. She felt it. A chill at the back of her neck whenever he entered the room. The way his eyes lingered too long. The compliments disguised as jokes. She tried to ignore it, hoping he would grow bored. But he didn't. His obsession grew especially after she became pregnant. He would show up unexpectedly bringing gifts he claimed were for the baby. He would slip comments into conversations with Adekunle, subtle but sharp. "You married well," he'd say. "Not all women stay so devoted. Or your wife has many admirers. Even in the market they stare." At first Adekunle laughed them off. But Sefu was persistent. Poison works slowly, but it works. One afternoon Sefu approached Mirembe alone. She was watering flowers in the courtyard when he stepped beside her too close. "You know," he murmured, "you and I share a bond your husband will never understand." She froze. "We share nothing. You saved my life. That ties us forever. That was an act of humanity, not intimacy," she snapped. Sefu's lips curled. "And yet you didn't tell Adekunle about it. Why hide it? Unless part of you felt something more. I hid it because I knew exactly the kind of poison you would become." His smile vanished. She walked away, but he called after her. "One day he will believe me over you." Those words haunted her because she knew how easily Adekunle's pride could be manipulated. She should have told him the truth then, but she hesitated. She didn't want to give Sefu power by making him a topic of tension in their marriage. She didn't want to feed the jealousy she sensed deep inside her husband. So she buried the secret, and that silence became the weapon Sefu used to destroy her. When he forged the photograph of her in the clinic doctor, he had timed it perfectly. He knew she had her routine checkup that day. He knew Adekunle was already suspicious. He knew exactly where to strike. But he didn't know the cost of what he'd done. As the storm battered Mirembe that night, she remembered all the moments she could have spoken up, all the warnings she ignored, all the prayers she whispered when Sefu's presence made her uneasy. But the past couldn't save her now. Lightning split open the sky as she trudged forward. Pain surged through her belly, sharp, sudden, and terrifying. She gasped, clutching the side of her stomach. Not now. Not here. Her child couldn't be born in a storm alone. Her legs gave way and she collapsed into the mud. She tried to crawl, but her hands slipped. Rain soaked her clothes, her hair, her skin. She could barely breathe. "Help!" she whispered, but her voice was swallowed by the wind. Just when she thought she would lose consciousness, she saw a dim lantern approaching through the rain. Footsteps hurried toward her. A voice, feminine, warm, and frantic, cut through the storm. "Oh, dear heavens! Child, are you all right?" Before fear could register, rough but gentle hands lifted her carefully. The woman was older, her face deeply lined, her eyes fierce with compassion. Her name was Mama Rhoda, a widow known by everyone in the area as a healer, a herbalist, a mother to the abandoned. "You're burning up," Mama Rhoda said urgently. "Come. You and that little one won't survive out here." Mirembe tried to speak, but she sobbed, instead broken, humiliated, terrified. Mama Rhoda wrapped her own shawl around the shaking woman and guided her toward a small hut with smoke rising from the chimney. Inside, the warmth of a fire embraced her instantly. The scent of healing herbs filled the air. Mama Rhoda dried her hair, checked her pulse, massaged her swollen feet. "You're safe now," she whispered. "No one will hurt you here." Only then did Mirembe break. She wept violently, tears of betrayal, of fear, of exhaustion. Mama Rhoda held her without asking questions. She had seen too many women arrive like this, wounds deeper than the physical. After the sobs quieted, Mama Rhoda asked softly, "Who did this to you, child?" Mirembe hesitated. Her hand rested on her belly protectively. She could lie. She could say she slipped. She could hide the truth like she always did. But something inside her cracked open. "My husband," she whispered. "He said this child isn't his. He sent me away." Mama Rhoda inhaled sharply, not in shock, but in sorrow. "Men blinded by pride can be more dangerous than any storm," she said. Mirembe closed her eyes. "What if I made the wrong choices? What if I should have told him everything from the beginning?" Mama Rhoda cupped her cheek gently. "You hid the wrong truth, but he chose the wrong belief. And both carry consequences." Those words settled into Mirembe's heart like seeds, seeds that would grow in ways neither of them could imagine. That night, as the storm raged, Mirembe slept for the first time in hours. Mama Rhoda checked on her, often murmuring prayers over her and the unborn child. Outside, the world had no idea that a woman who once lived in a mansion now lay in a tiny hut beginning a new chapter born from pain. But fate had not finished with her, and neither had the truth. The storm had not yet passed when morning came. Rain softened to a cold drizzle, tapping gently on the rusted metal roof of Mama Rhoda's hut. A weak beam of sunlight crept in through the doorway, landing on Mirembe's face as she slowly opened her eyes. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The familiar ceiling of her mansion was gone. The scent of polished floors, perfumes, and wealth had vanished. Instead, she was surrounded by woven mats, drying herbs, and a humble clay pot bubbling quietly over the fire. Then the memories of last night came crashing back. Adekunle, the accusations, the storm, the gates slamming shut, her breath caught painfully in her throat. She pressed her hand over her belly, feeling the faint movement of her unborn child, and whispered shakily, "We're still here. Thank God we're still here." Mama Rhoda entered the room just then, carrying a wooden tray with a steaming clay cup. "Good morning, child. You frightened me last night. I wasn't sure you or the baby would last till dawn." Mirembe tried to sit up, but pain tightened across her abdomen. Mama Rhoda gently propped her up with folded blankets. "Drink this," she said, handing her the cup. "It will steady your body." The mixture tasted earthy, bitter, but warm, and with each sip, her trembling eased. "Thank you," Mirembe murmured. Mama Rhoda nodded. "When you are strong enough, you will tell me everything." She paused, studying the younger woman's face. "But I know pain when I see it." "Yours goes deeper than last night." Mirembe felt a lump rise in her throat. She swallowed it, but it refused to go away. "My husband, he thinks I betrayed him. He thinks this child isn't his." Mama Rhoda placed a hand on hers, gentle, steady, reassuring. "Then he is a fool." The words were simple, but they struck Mirembe's heart with unexpected force. She had been told many things in her life: be patient, be kind, be forgiving, but never had anyone called Adekunle a fool out loud. Maybe because everyone feared him, or respected him, or envied him. But Mama Rhoda saw him through the eyes of a healer, eyes that measured a person's wounds, not their wealth. "You love him," Mama Rhoda said softly. Mirembe nodded slowly. "More than anything, and he broke you," the older woman added. That truth alone made tears spill down Mirembe's cheeks. She didn't cry loudly, she didn't shake. She simply let the tears fall slow and silent, as though each drop carried pieces of the life she'd lost. Mama Rhoda waited patiently, letting grief take its time. After a long moment, she whispered, "When you are ready, I will help you stand. But you must understand something, child. Some storms come to clear a path, not to destroy it." The words settled into the room like a prophecy. For the next few days, Mirembe recovered under Mama Rhoda's watch. The pain in her belly faded. The baby's movements grew stronger. She helped around the hut when she could, fetching water, sorting herbs, cleaning bowls. But whenever she paused, whenever her hands were still, the memories returned to gut her like a fresh wound. She saw Adekunle's face twisted with rage. She heard his voice accusing her. She relived the moment he turned his back. Sometimes she wondered if she had imagined it all, if the storm had exaggerated his cruelty, if stress had warped her memory. But then she remembered his words, sharp and unforgiving. "Take your lies and get out." There was no misunderstanding that. One evening, as she sat outside the hut, watching the sunset bleed orange over the horizon, Mama Rhoda joined her. "You have said nothing of your plans," the older woman observed. "I don't know what my plans are," Mirembe admitted softly. "How does one rebuild when everything they treasured is gone?" "You haven't lost everything," Mama Rhoda replied. "You still have your child." Mirembe placed a hand on her belly. A small smile tugged at her lips, fragile but real. "Yes, he's all I have now, and he will need you strong," Mama Rhoda reminded her gently, "so you cannot keep your heart in the past." "But he is my husband," Mirembe whispered. "I vowed to stay with him." "Even vows must bend under truth," Mama Rhoda said. "If a man builds his home on lies, can you live inside it without breaking?" The silence that followed was heavy. But there was a deeper silence happening miles away inside the mansion, where Adekunle paced endlessly, unable to sleep, unable to think. While Mirembe healed, Adekunle unraveled. At first he convinced himself he had done the right thing, that he had saved himself from humiliation, that he had acted as any man would. But the house felt unbearably empty. Her laughter was gone. Her soft footsteps were gone. Even the scent of her favorite jasmine oil had faded. And when he passed the nursery, barely furnished yet filled with dreams, they stabbed him like thorns. He would stand in the doorway staring at the tiny cradle, his pride whispering, "You did what you had to." But his heart whispered back, "Then why are you suffering?" His turmoil only deepened when Sefu visited 2 days later. "You look horrible," Sefu said with a smirk, walking into the living room as though he owned it. "Leave," Adekunle muttered. "What, no gratitude?" Sefu mocked. "I saved you from raising another man's." "Enough," Adekunle snapped. But Sefu kept talking. "He always did. You should focus on moving on. Mirembe has certainly done so. She's probably with that man right now. Adekunle's hands curled into fists. Something in Seifu's tone felt wrong. Too confident. Too eager. Tell me, Adekunle said slowly. How did you get that picture? Seifu's eyes flickered barely, but Adekunle saw it. I told you, Seifu replied too quickly. I saw her myself. You saw her at the clinic, Adekunle pressed. Or did someone send it to you? Seifu hesitated. That one moment crashed through every crack of doubt in Adekunle's chest. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to plant a seed of dread. He stood abruptly. Get out. Seifu's smile faded. Why? So you can convince yourself she's innocent. A woman who deceived, I said get out. Seifu left, but his smirk returned the moment the door closed behind him. He wasn't worried. Adekunle was fragile but predictable. And yet, he underestimated how deep guilt could carve into a man. Adekunle spent the night pacing his office. He replayed every conversation with his wife, every moment of kindness, every gentle smile, every time she had placed his hand on her stomach proud and glowing. All the moments he had ignored. The guilt became unbearable. By morning, he ordered his driver to search every road near the house, every hospital, every shelter, every police station. But Mirembe had vanished. It was as if the storm had swallowed her whole. Back in the hut, Mama Rhoda approached Mirembe with a quiet determination. Child, she said, I will teach you how to stand on your own. But you must first decide if you are willing to let go of the life you came from. I don't know, Mirembe whispered honestly. I still love him. Mama Rhoda nodded. Love does not disappear overnight, but sometimes love must be reshaped. What do you mean? You will understand with time, Mama Rhoda said gently. But hear this, child, no man who casts out a woman carrying his blood deserves her tears. Mirembe stared at the horizon, her mind swirling. Her old life was broken, her future uncertain. But inside her, something new was forming. Not just a child, but a strength she had never known before. And the moment that strength awakened her destiny, and Adekunle's would change forever. The storm had taken much from her. But it had also given her something she did not yet realize, a beginning. The following days unfolded like a slow stitching of wounds, painful but necessary. Mirembe regained her strength, though the ache inside her chest lingered like a bruise that refused to fade. Mama Rhoda watched her closely, sensing the internal war raging beneath her calm expressions. Despite the food, warmth, and safety, the hut offered grief clung to Mirembe like a second skin. But life, as always, refused to pause. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast long gold streaks across the sky, Mirembe felt a tightening in her belly. At first she ignored it, assuming it to be another false contraction. Her pregnancy had been filled with small flutters and occasional discomforts. But then the tightening sharpened into a bolt of pain that took her breath away. She gasped, gripping the edge of the table. Mama Rhoda rushed to her side. Child. What is it? Another contraction hit stronger, deeper, more commanding. It's too soon, Mirembe whispered, panic rising in her throat. It's not time yet. Mama Rhoda placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Your child chooses its own time. The storm you survived may have hastened this day. She guided Mirembe toward a low bed padded with blankets and woven mats. Breathe, child. You must stay calm. But calm was impossible. Sweat dripped down her forehead. Fear clamped around her ribs like iron. Her body trembled as the pain returned in rolling waves. She clutched Mama Rhoda's arm. I can't do this. Not now, not alone. You are not alone, Mama Rhoda said fiercely. I am here, and your child is stronger than you think. Mirembe cried out as another contraction tore through her. Her mind swirled. Images flashed before her, her wedding day, the happiness she once felt. Adekunle smiling down at her with pride. The nursery they prepared together, his hands touching her belly with awe. Then the last image, him turning his back, leaving her in the storm. Her heart shattered all over again. For hours, labor consumed her. She screamed into the night, gripping the sheets until her knuckles whitened. Mama Rhoda worked tirelessly beside her, cooling her forehead, whispering encouragement, massaging her lower back, preparing herbs to help ease the intensity. But nature was relentless. You must push now, Mama Rhoda urged when the time came. I can't, you must. Your child is ready. With a final cry that scraped from the deepest part of her soul, Mirembe pushed as though she were releasing every ounce of heartbreak, betrayal, and fear she had carried. And then, a sound. A thin, fragile cry filled the hut. Mama Rhoda lifted a tiny, wrinkled newborn covered in warmth and promise and wiped him gently before placing him into Mirembe's trembling arms. He is here, Mama Rhoda whispered. a strong baby boy. The world seemed to freeze. Mirembe stared down at the child, her breath catching. His eyes, though still adjusting to the world, held a familiar depth. His lips, his small nose, even the shape of his forehead, all unmistakably belonged to his father, to Adekunle. Tears spilled freely down her face this time, not from pain, but from an overwhelming mixture of love and sorrow. "He looks just like him," she whispered. Mama Rhoda nodded slowly. "There is no doubt whose blood runs in his veins." That truth struck Mirembe harder than any storm. For months she had endured suspicion, coldness, rejection, all based on lies. But here in her arms was the absolute proof of her innocence, pure, undeniable living truth. She held her son close, pressing her lips to his tiny forehead. "I will protect you," she whispered, "no matter what." As she rocked him, Mama Rhoda stepped aside to give her space. But in the quiet of the night, something about the baby caught her healer's eye. A faint birthmark glowed beneath the child's right shoulder blade, a mark shaped like a half star. She inhaled sharply. Her voice came out soft, almost reverent. "Do you know the significance of this?" Mirembe looked up, still breathless. "The mark," Mama Rhoda crouched beside her. "This is the mark of your husband's lineage. Only the men in his bloodline carry it. It appears rarely, but when it does, it signifies a child destined for leadership." Mirembe froze. "Adekunle has this mark," Mama Rhoda continued. "His father had it, and his grandfather before that." Mirembe's heart pounded. She had seen the mark on Adekunle during quiet mornings. When he changed shirts, she once traced it with her fingers, teasing him about its unusual shape. She had never imagined her child would inherit it. "It means," she whispered, "it means your husband wronged you beyond measure," Mama Rhoda completed, "and one day he must answer for it." The baby's cry softened into a gentle cooing sound. Mirembe brushed a fingertip across the birthmark and felt something shift inside her, strength, certainty, and a quiet steel that surprised even her. "He will never be unwanted," she vowed. "I will give him everything." Mama Rhoda placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "And one day the truth will return to the man who cast you aside." The following weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, whispered lullabies, and the delicate dance of new motherhood. Mirembe named her son Tendo, meaning praise and grace. It felt fitting after everything she survived. He was the miracle born from pain. Mama Rhoda helped her learn how to feed him, bathe him, soothe him. The older woman became a grandmotherly figure, guiding her through countless firsts: first bath, first smile, first day. He grasped her finger. But outside the quiet sanctuary of the hut, the world was shifting. Adekunle was losing control of his life. His company's performance dipped as he distracted himself with search efforts. He barely slept, spending nights driving through roads he once considered beneath him. He questioned neighbors, hospitals, strangers, anyone who might have seen a woman with swollen belly walking alone in the storm. The guilt gnawed at him until he began to wither. He stopped eating properly. He snapped at employees. Even his board members began whispering behind his back. He found the photograph again, the one Sefu had shown him. This time, instead of fury, he studied it with the clarity of a broken man. He noticed things he had missed before the angle of the shot, the suspicious cropping, the way the edges seemed altered. And then one detail sent a chill through him. The date on the back of the photograph was smudged, incorrect, inconsistent, impossible. His chest tightened. His breath shortened. He had been manipulated into throwing away the woman he once loved more than his empire. He sank onto his bed, burying his face in his hands, and for the first time since childhood, Adekunle wept. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief. He cried like a man whose soul had been split open. And outside his window, another storm began to gather, dark clouds roiling across the sky, as though the heavens themselves were preparing for the truth to awaken. Back in the village, unaware of the chaos awaiting her, Mirembe held her sleeping son against her chest. The lamp flickered softly. The air smelled of wood smoke and peace. Her thumb stroked the birthmark on his shoulder. Little did she know, that mark would be the very thing to unravel everything. Not just for her, not just for Adekunle, but for everyone connected to their destiny, and soon the world that had once cast her out would have no choice but to face the truth she carried. The first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the woven walls of Mama Rhoda's hut, landing softly on Mirembe's sleeping form. Tendo rested on her chest, tiny breaths rising and falling against her heartbeat. For the first time in months, she felt a fragile sense of peace, like her soul had finally been allowed to exhale. Life in the village moved differently from the mansion she once called home. There were no marble floors polished to reflection, no servants bustling in constant rhythm, no hushed voices discussing business deals, no constant pressure for perfection. Here life breathed. It grew at its own pace. It nourished instead of suffocating. As Tendo grew, so did the bond between mother and son. He was a quiet baby, but observant, always watching, always studying faces, with a seriousness far beyond his age. When he laughed, it was sudden and bright like the sun breaking through storm clouds. And every time he smiled, Mirembe felt her heart stitch itself just a little more. Yet beneath that healing, an ache still throbbed. Sometimes it came in the quiet moments when she rocked Tendo to sleep, when she stirred a pot of porridge, when she heard the distant laughter of families outside. Memories of Adekunle would creep in unwanted but persistent. She remembered the warmth of his arms when he first whispered his love to her, the vow he made beneath the moonlight, the pride in his eyes when she told him she was pregnant. Then just as vividly, she remembered the coldness in his expression when he cast her out. The disbelief, the betrayal, the words that gutted her. There was no escaping the wounds, only learning to live with them. One afternoon, as she carried Tendo outside to enjoy the gentle breeze, Mama Rhoda approached her with a basket filled with herbs and hand-carved charms. "You have been here many weeks now," Mama Rhoda said kindly, "and I see strength returning to your eyes." She placed a hand on Mirembe's shoulder. "But strength is not the same as a future. What path do you seek to walk now?" The question made Mirembe pause. She looked down at Tendo, who cooed softly, gripping her finger with unexpected strength. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't want to think about the past. But I don't know what the future looks like either." Mama Rhoda nodded. "Then perhaps it is time to build one. A woman cannot live on pain alone." She gestured toward the village beyond the trees. "Our people need hands that can craft, hands that can heal, hands that can create. You have those hands, child." At first, Mirembe shook her head. "I am capable of nothing. That is your pain speaking," Mama Rhoda replied. "Not your truth." And so slowly, Mirembe began to learn. Under Mama Rhoda's patient guidance, she studied herbs and remedies, how to treat fever with dried bark powder, how to soothe teething with clove leaf, how to calm nightmares using fragrant roots. She helped grind herbs in stone bowls, wrapped healing poultices in banana leaves, and prepared remedies for villagers who came seeking help. In time, her hands grew steady. Her heart grew steadier. When she wasn't learning healing, she turned to crafting something she once loved, but had abandoned when she married into wealth. She wove baskets with intricate patterns, braided colorful mats, carved tiny toys from soft wood for Tendo. Word spread quickly of her growing skill, and villagers began visiting, asking her to craft special items for ceremonies and celebrations. She found herself busy from morning till evening. But more importantly, she found herself again. Even as Tendo grew, babbling, teetering on small feet, discovering the world with bright curiosity, Mirembe rebuilt her identity piece by piece. She created a quiet, humble life filled with meaning. Yet there was one truth she tried desperately to forget: Adekunle was still out there somewhere. Sometimes at night, when the village slept and only crickets sang, she wondered what he was doing. Was he angry, regretful, searching? Or had he moved on, convinced she was the villain in his story? She tried not to care. Truly, she did. But love does not disappear simply because it has been bruised. Meanwhile, miles away in the mansion that once held both their dreams, Adekunle's world continued its rapid descent into chaos. His company, once the envy of every competitor, was deteriorating under his distracted leadership. Business partners grew nervous. Investors demanded answers. His board members whispered behind closed doors about his instability, but none of that compared to the turmoil inside his heart. Every time he saw the empty side of his bed, every time he walked past the nursery that remained untouched, every time he found a belonging of hers, a hairpin, a shawl, a book she'd left on the couch, he felt his chest tighten until breathing became painful. He replayed his final words to her 1,000 times. "Take your lies and get out." God, what had he done? The photo that triggered his rage now looked like madness. The man beside her, how had he not noticed the stethoscope? The clinical building behind them, the utter innocence in her posture. Shame crushed him. And beneath the shame, something darker burned: hatred. Not for her, for himself. And for Sefu, who he increasingly suspected had orchestrated everything. He confronted Sefu again, demanding truths, demanding explanations. And though Sefu denied involvement with smooth lies, the cracks in his story widened. Adekunle hired a private investigator to examine the picture. 2 days later, the investigator returned with a simple verdict: it's been manipulated. Hearing those words nearly brought Adekunle to his knees. He had thrown away the woman he loved. He had abandoned his unborn child. He had let jealousy devour his sanity. And now, he was alone. Completely devastatingly alone. With desperation as his only fuel, Adekunle expanded his search. He put notices at clinics. He visited villages. He questioned midwives. He drove through rural roads day and night, but storms leave traces that fade quickly. And Mirembe, following Mama Rhoda's advice, stayed hidden in a place where no one would think to look. Fate, however, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to rise. One late morning as Mirembe collected herbs near the small stream behind the village, she felt a strange shift inside her chest. It wasn't pain, it wasn't fear. It was a pull, an intuition so strong she dropped the leaves she was holding. Tendo toddled beside her, gripping her skirt for balance. He looked up, blinking curiously. "What is it, child?" she whispered to him, though she knew he couldn't answer. A breeze swept across the water, stirring the leaves. Birds fell silent. Even the stream seemed to slow its bubbling rhythm. Something was coming, something inevitable, something she could not yet name. Mama Rhoda, watching her from afar, felt it too. The old woman approached slowly. "Destiny has begun to turn," she murmured. Mirembe swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means you will soon face the part of your story you tried to leave behind." Fear flickered in her eyes. "I don't want to go back." "No one said you must," Mama Rhoda replied gently. "But truth has a way of finding those who run from it." Mirembe looked down at Tendo, who reached up to be carried. She lifted him into her arms, holding him close, as uncertainty curled through her chest. "What if the truth breaks everything again?" she whispered. Mama Rhoda stroked her arm. "Child, you have already been broken. Now, you will learn what it means to rise." Above them, the sky darkened, not with storm clouds, but with the weight of fate shifting. The world she had left behind was inching closer. The past was not done with her, and soon the man who once cast her into the rain would collide with the life she rebuilt from the ashes. The village was wrapped in its usual morning hush when the first signs of change appeared, subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone except those who understood how fate moved. Mama Rhoda sensed it before the wind even shifted. She stood at the doorway of her hut, her eyes narrowing at the horizon, as though she could see something, someone approaching from miles away. Inside, Mirembe was helping Tendo stack small wooden toys she had carved. The little boy giggled each time the tower collapsed, clapping his tiny hands with pure delight. His laughter filled the room like sunlight. She smiled softly, brushing a curl from his forehead. "You're growing too fast," she whispered. He babbled in response, grabbing her finger and leaning against her. At moments like this, she felt whole, complete, in a way she never had before. Her son was her anchor, her purpose, her greatest blessing. Even if the rest of the world crumbled, she had him. But in a place she refused to visit inside her heart, she wished he could have been born into a family, not just a mother alone. She wished Adekunle had been the one to hold him, to count his little toes, to marvel at the tiny eyelashes that matched his own. Wishful thinking, she reminded herself. Dangerous thinking. She could not afford such thoughts. Not anymore. Later that morning, Mama Rhoda entered the hut with a seriousness that instantly set Mirembe on edge. The older woman rarely wore fear on her face, but today it lingered there just long enough to make Mirembe's pulse quicken. "Mama, what is wrong?" she asked. Mama Rhoda didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for Tendo, lifting him gently into her arms while studying the child's features with a depth that made Mirembe uneasy. "His mark is growing more defined," Mama Rhoda murmured. "Look." Mirembe stepped closer. The birthmark, a half-star-shaped symbol on Tendo's shoulder blade, seemed darker today, more pronounced, almost glowing. "They only grow like this," Mama Rhoda said quietly, "when destiny begins to stir around the child." "What does that mean?" Mirembe pressed, fear tightening around her ribs. "It means this child cannot remain hidden forever." "No," Mirembe whispered, shaking her head. "I won't let him be taken. I won't let anyone hurt him." Mama Rhoda touched her cheek gently. "No one will hurt him, but you cannot outrun what is woven into his blood." Her voice softened further, barely above a whisper. "His father's world is drawing near." A chill ran down Mirembe's spine. "Has someone come looking for him?" "For us, not yet," Mama Rhoda answered. "But something in the energy has shifted. I feel a disturbance, as though a man who once walked with pride has begun walking with desperation." The words struck too close to home. Mirembe's breath caught. "Desperation?" Her voice trembled. "Do you mean Adekunle?" Mama Rhoda nodded slightly. "That is my fear." Meanwhile, miles away from the small sanctuary where mother and child lived, Adekunle's life was crumbling faster than he could hold it together. His board members were growing impatient, profits had dipped significantly, and rumors circulated like wildfire whispers that the great Adekunle had lost his touch, lost his focus, lost himself. Associates who once bowed in respect now questioned his decisions. Investors threatened to pull out, but Adekunle only cared about one thing: finding Mirembe. His search had consumed him. He spent every day driving through villages, talking to matriarchs, healers, farmers, midwives, anyone who might have seen a heavily pregnant woman on the night of the storm. He bribed, pleaded, begged. He didn't care what dignity he lost in the process. Nothing mattered except fixing what he had broken. Guilt ate at him like acid. Shame kept him awake at night. Regret curled into the corners of his soul. He replayed his cruelty in endless loops. The way he shouted at her, the terror on her face, the storm, the final moment when she whispered, "I love you," and he gave her silence in return. He would have given anything, his money, his status, his fortune, to go back to that night and undo everything. But time was merciless, and so was fate. He didn't know that Sefu had been watching all along, quietly observing Adekunle's unraveling with growing frustration. Sefu never expected him to search so relentlessly. He believed Adekunle's pride would stop him from caring. He believed the disappearance would be accepted as abandonment or betrayal, but he had underestimated the power of the bond between them. In his fury, Sefu began taking more dangerous steps to secure the company for himself. But his downfall was already set in motion, because the child he had tried to erase, the truth he had tried to bury, was now living peacefully in a hut under the watch of a wise healer. Back in the village, Mirembe tried to return to her routine. She gathered herbs, tended to villagers with small ailments, and taught Tendo how to walk on steady ground. But an uneasiness clung to her like a shadow she could not shake. One afternoon, as she walked to the stream with her basket, she heard distant footsteps. Quick, urgent. She froze. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Memories of that stormy night flashed through her mind, running, crying, unsure if she would survive. Mama Rhoda appeared behind her, placing a firm hand on her arm. "Do not fear shadows," she said, "but do not ignore them either." Together they waited. The footsteps grew louder, then softened, then disappeared. A false alarm, but the encounter left Mirembe shaken. When she returned to the hut, she held Tendo so tightly, he fussed against her chest. "What if he finds us?" she whispered to Mama Rhoda. "What if he tries to take Tendo away?" Mama Rhoda cupped her chin. "Child, listen to me. No court, no man, no force alive can take a child from a mother who has done nothing wrong. But he is a wealthy man," Mirembe argued. "He has power." Mama Rhoda's eyes hardened. "And power built on darkness cannot defeat truth." "I don't trust him," Mirembe admitted, her voice shaking. "I don't trust anyone anymore." "That is because your heart is still healing," the old woman said gently. "And healing hearts often see danger everywhere, even where there is none." Mirembe's eyes lowered. She whispered, "I don't know if I will ever forgive him." "Forgiveness," Mama Rhoda said, "is not owed. And it is not given for the other person. It is given to free yourself." Mirembe held her child closer. "Then I'm not ready. Then you do not give it," Mama Rhoda replied simply. In the silence that followed, Tendo reached up and touched his mother's cheek as if comforting her. And that was when everything changed. Tendo leaned forward, his tiny fingers brushing the half-star mark on his shoulder blade. For the first time it glowed faintly, just enough to catch the light. Mama Rhoda inhaled sharply. "It has begun." "What has begun, Mirembe?" cried fear, returning full force. "The mark is an anchor," Mama Rhoda explained. "A beacon. His father's bloodline will eventually sense it, and when they do, they will come." Mirembe's entire body tensed. Her breath trembled. "Mama, no, I can't let him find us. I can't go back there. I can't." Mama Rhoda shook her head. Fate does not ask permission. The air thickened with a tension neither could describe. And far away at that exact moment, as Adekunle stared hopelessly at a map of the region during yet another sleepless night, something tugged inside his chest, a faint pull like an invisible thread guiding him. He didn't know what it meant, he didn't know where it came from, but he felt compelled, drawn to a direction he hadn't searched yet. A direction that led straight toward his son, straight toward the truth, straight toward the woman he had cast into the rain. The past was now shifting toward the present, and the collision was inevitable. Night settled heavily over the village, draping everything in deep indigo shadows, as if the sky itself sensed the unraveling threads of fate. Mirembe sat near the fire rocking Tendo in her arms, while Mama Rhoda ground herbs at the table. The flames crackled, casting soft flickers of gold across the walls, but even their warmth could not ease the cold tightening in Mirembe's chest. Her mind refused to rest. Every breath she took seemed to echo the same fear. He will find us. Not because she still saw Adekunle as a danger, though part of her did, but because the confrontation she had avoided for so long felt like a storm gathering just beyond the tree line. Tendo shifted in her arms, babbling softly before drifting into another peaceful sleep. His little fingers curled against her collarbone, seeking comfort, unaware of the destiny pulling at their lives. "Your thoughts are loud tonight," Mama Rhoda said without looking up. Mirembe blinked, startled. I'm just tired." "No," Mama Rhoda replied. "Your mind is pacing like a restless lion." "Speak." Mirembe hesitated. She stared into the fire as if it held her answers. "Do you really think he's coming?" Adekunle? Mama Rhoda set aside the pestle and wiped her hands on her wrapper. Then she moved closer, lowering herself beside Mirembe. "I think," the older woman began gently, "that a man who realizes the weight of the heart he broke will search the earth to mend it." "But what if he doesn't want me?" Mirembe whispered, voice trembling. "What if he only wants the child? What if he tries to take Tendo away?" Mama Rhoda shook her head firmly. "That man, lost though he may be, does not know the child exists. His pull is not toward Tendo. Not yet. The pull is toward the truth he was too blind to see." Mirembe swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can face him." "You don't have to decide tonight," Mama Rhoda said. "Destiny moves whether we accept it or not." While Mirembe wrestled with fear, Adekunle drove through the countryside with the hollow eyes of a man who no longer recognized his own reflection. His once immaculate clothes were wrinkled, his beard untrimmed, his hair a disheveled mess. Every passing day drenched him deeper in guilt, and every village he visited left him more hopeless. He hovered between madness and determination. On this particular night, he stopped his car near a small river crossing, stepping out to breathe in the cold air. Above him, a strange stillness hung in the sky. Fireflies flickered across the bushes like tiny floating lanterns. Frogs croaked from the reeds. Shepherd dogs barked from distant farms. Then unexpectedly, his chest tightened. It wasn't pain, it wasn't fear. It was a sensation he couldn't explain, like invisible fingers tugging gently but insistently at his heart. He turned sharply toward a direction he had not considered before, a narrow dirt path leading deeper into the plains, toward areas less developed, less known. He frowned. His driver approached cautiously. "Sir, are you all right?" Adekunle's voice was faint, confused. "I need to go that way." "Sir, that leads to very remote villages," I said. "We go now." The driver hesitated, saw the fire in Adekunle's eyes, and quickly obeyed. As the car rumbled down the rough terrain, Adekunle felt it again, that strange pull, almost like a whisper in his blood. He didn't know that the same pull echoed in Tendo's veins. He didn't know that destiny was aligning their paths. He didn't know that every mile brought him closer to the truth he feared as much as he needed. Back in the village, life continued as usual. Women cooked supper over open fires, men returned from fishing or farming, and children ran barefoot through dirt paths laughing with reckless joy. Yet beneath the normalcy, change lay coiled like a serpent waiting to strike. The next morning, Mirembe decided to gather medicinal leaves near the old baobab tree, the place where the air always felt calmest. Tendo toddled beside her, holding a carved wooden lion in one hand while clinging to her skirt with the other. She watched him with a mixture of awe and heartbreak. "Slowly, my small lion," she murmured, guiding him carefully through the grass. He looked up at her eyes, bright and curious. He truly was Adekunle's son. Anyone could see it. The shape of his eyes, the ridge of his brows, the determined pout that formed on his lips when he concentrated too hard. If Adekunle ever laid eyes on him, there would be no denying it, and that terrified her. She reached the baobab tree and began collecting the leaves Mama Rhoda had requested. Birds chirped overhead, and Tendo plopped down near the roots to inspect a trail of ants marching across the soil. For a moment, everything felt normal, peaceful, until a sound shattered it, a distant engine. Mirembe stiffened, her blood turning cold. Engines were rare here. Visitors were rare. And the last time she heard that low hum of a car approaching, her heart lurched painfully. She scooped Tendo into her arms with shaking hands. He sensed her fear and clung to her tightly. The engine grew louder. Mirembe stumbled backward, glancing frantically toward the village. Maybe if she ran, she could reach the hut before whoever it was arrived. But something told her it wouldn't matter. She moved quickly through the brush, her breath short and uneven. Tendo whimpered in her arms, sensing her panic. Mama Easy, came Mama Rhoda's voice as she appeared between the trees. But when her eyes met, Mirembe's concern flashed immediately. What happened? Someone's coming, Mirembe whispered hoarsely. I heard a vehicle. Mama Rhoda's face grew grim. Then it begins sooner than I thought. Mirembe grabbed her arm. We need to hide. I can't let him take Tendo. Mama Rhoda placed both hands firmly on her shoulders. Listen to me, child. If it is him running, we'll only bring more danger. If it is not him, you still cannot live in fear. Tears welled up in Mirembe's eyes. I can't face him, Mama. I'm not ready. No mother is ever ready to confront the source of her pain, Mama Rhoda said softly, but she must do it anyway. A rumble grew louder. Then the car appeared at the edge of the village road, dust swirling behind it in great plumes. Villagers paused, heads lifted, conversations halted. Mirembe felt like her heart had stopped beating. The vehicle slowed, then came to a complete stop. Her hands shook violently. The world around her blurred. Then, the driver stepped out first. Then the back door opened, and Adekunle emerged. He looked nothing like the man she remembered. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion, his face hollow with sleepless nights. His fine suit hung loosely on him, creased and worn. But most striking of all, he looked broken. Completely, utterly broken. His eyes scanned the village, desperate, searching, frantic. And then, for the briefest heartbeat, his gaze collided with hers through the trees. Adekunle froze. Everything around him disappeared. The villagers, the dust, the sunlight. Nothing mattered except the woman standing a few dozen yards away, the woman he had cast out into the rain. The woman he had feared he'd lost forever. Mirembe, he breathed, his voice cracking. Her knees nearly gave way. This was the moment she both dreaded and wished for. But she wasn't the only one who reacted. Tendo, sensing her tension, lifted his head from her shoulder. His eyes, so identical to Adekunle's, met his father's for the first time. Adekunle's breath caught. His chest tightened violently. He staggered a step forward. Then another. His voice came out as a whisper, drenched in disbelief. That child, his eyes widened. That child looks like... Destiny slammed into them like a tidal wave. Truth stood between them, alive, undeniable, undeniable. And in that moment, the world changed. For all three of them. For several heartbeats, the world froze. Mirembe could hear nothing but her own pulse, thundering in her ears. Tendo whimpered softly in her arms, sensing the tension suffocating the air. Adekunle stood motionless near the dusty road. His breath caught in his throat as if merely existing had become impossible. No one moved. No one spoke. Not even the wind dared to stir. It was Mama Rhoda who finally broke the spell. She stepped forward slowly, her voice cutting through the thick silence. Go inside, child. But Mirembe didn't move. She couldn't. Her legs felt rooted to the earth, her arms stiff around Tendo. Adekunle took another unsteady step toward them. His voice trembled. Mirembe. Is he? His eyes remained locked on the child. On Tendo's small, round face. On the bright, curious eyes that mirrored his own. On the half-star birthmark, peeking faintly from beneath the child's shirt, a mark Adekunle himself carried. His chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. He already knew the answer, but his heart refused to accept how deeply he had wronged her. Mirembe turned her face away, hugging Tendo closer. The fear, raw choking, returned in a violent wave. She whispered hoarsely, Mama, I can't do this, please. Mama Rhoda placed a steadying hand on her back. You are not alone. But Adekunle took another step forward, desperation pouring from every fiber of his being. Mirembe, please wait. Don't run. Just let me talk to you. His voice broke at the end. A man who once commanded boardrooms with icy authority now sounded like a child begging to undo the impossible. But Mirembe's mind spiraled into the past, the storm, the pain, the betrayal, his unyielding rage. She felt it all again as though time had never passed. Her chest constricted. I don't want to hear anything you have to say, she whispered. But Adekunle shook his head violently. No, you must. I have to explain. I was wrong, so wrong, and I've been dying every day since you left. Mama Rhoda stepped protectively in front of Mirembe, blocking Adekunle's path. That is close enough, the old woman said sternly. Adekunle stopped, breathing, hard eyes, wide and pleading. Mama, please. I mean no harm, she raised her chin. Whether you mean harm or not is not for you to decide. The villagers gathered, forming a loose circle at a distance, whispering among themselves. It wasn't often that a luxury vehicle arrived in their humble home. Whispers carried, "Is that her husband? He looks destroyed. That child, he has his eyes. Will he take the boy? What will she do?" Still trembling, Mirembe backed farther behind Mama Rhoda. All she wanted was to keep Tendo away from the storm that had once torn her life apart. "Why did you come here?" Mirembe finally asked, though her voice was barely audible. Adekunle's shoulders sagged, as if the question alone carried enough weight to collapse him. "To find you," he whispered. "I've searched everywhere, every village, every hospital, every road. I haven't slept in weeks. I haven't eaten properly. I haven't—" His voice cracked again. "I haven't known peace since the night I threw you out." Mirembe flinched. He swallowed hard. "I was wrong. I was blind. And I let my fear destroy the best part of my life." He dragged a shaky hand through his hair. "I trusted the wrong person. I believed lies. I believed Sefu. I believed a photograph that wasn't even real." Mirembe's eyes widened. Mama Rhoda's hand tightened on her shoulder. "Yes," Adekunle said, seeing their reaction. "The picture was manipulated. He admitted nothing but the evidence is clear. I checked. I confronted him. His jaw clenched. I discovered he had been poisoning my mind long before the picture ever surfaced." A murmur rippled through the villagers. "But it doesn't matter," Adekunle continued, voice trembling, "because none of it excuses what I did to you. None of it justifies how I treated you." He lowered his head. "I have no right to ask for forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I am begging for the chance to make things right." Mirembe felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she fought them fiercely. She swallowed her pain and lifted her chin. "How long did it take," she asked softly, "before you believed I'd betrayed you?" He looked up, haunted. "The moment Sefu planted doubt in me." "And how long did you think our child wasn't yours?" He shut his eyes. "Too long. Even though I never gave you any reason to doubt me." "I know," he whispered, shattered. "I know. And you cast me into the storm. Pregnant. Alone." His voice broke. "I will hate myself for that until the day I die." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves. The villagers fell silent, the weight of Mirembe's words hanging heavily in the air. Mama Rhoda stepped aside slightly, still close enough to intervene, but giving them room to face one another. Mirembe trembled. She didn't want to hear his apologies. She didn't want him near her son. She didn't want the feelings she had buried to rise again. But her gaze drifted to Adekunle's face, and she saw not the powerful mogul who once controlled her world, but a broken man fractured by regret. Adekunle took a careful step forward, eyes fixed on Tendo. "And he is my son, isn't he?" Tendo blinked at him curiously, as if sensing that this stranger was connected to him in some inexplicable way. Mirembe's arms tightened around her child. "Yes," she whispered, "he is yours." Adekunle's knees buckled, and he fell onto the dirt, hands trembling violently. A choked sound escaped him, a strangled sob he could no longer hold back. "Oh God," he cried. "My son! My son!" Tears streamed down his face. The villagers watched stunned. Some felt sympathy, others felt anger on Mirembe's behalf, but no one spoke. After what felt like minutes, Adekunle forced himself to his feet again. He wiped his eyes but remained unsteady. I, he asked, voice trembling. "May I hold him?" The question hit Mirembe like a spear. Her heart clenched protectively. "No," she said immediately. "No, you may not." Adekunle nodded, accepting the refusal with heartbreaking gentleness. "I understand," he whispered. "I don't deserve that right." "Not yet." Mama Rhoda stepped forward. "What exactly do you want from her, Adekunle?" He looked at Mirembe with raw sincerity. "A chance," he said. "Just a chance to prove I can be better. A chance to be in my son's life. A chance to rebuild the family I shattered." Pain twisted painfully through Mirembe. "And what then? You think you can walk in and fix everything with apologies?" "No," he said firmly. "I know I can't fix everything, but I can start by taking responsibility, by making amends, by fighting for the family I threw away." Mirembe's throat tightened. "And what if I don't want you in my life anymore?" Adekunle's breath shuddered. "Then I will step back," he said softly. "But I will never stop loving you or our child. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to prove that I am not the same man who hurt you." Those words, raw, trembling, vulnerable, sent a crack through the walls Mirembe had built around her heart. But the wounds were deep. Too deep. She looked away, holding Tendo tighter. "I need time," she whispered. "I need space." Adekunle nodded slowly, tears still glistening in his eyes. I will give you anything you ask, he said. Time, space, distance, whatever you need, I will not rush you. Just, please, don't shut me out forever. The world held its breath as Mirembe stood silently torn between the past that had broken her and the future that now stood pleading in front of her. Mama Rhoda's voice came soft but firm. Child, destiny has placed a crossroads before you. Mirembe exhaled shakily, unable to speak. The story was no longer just hers. It belonged to the man on his knees. It belonged to the child in her arms. It belonged to the future waiting to be chosen. And though her heart trembled, something inside her whispered that the truth was only beginning to surface. A heavy silence settled over the village, clearing thick enough to drown in. Adekunle stood frozen raw emotion, carved into every line of his face, while Mirembe stepped back, as though proximity alone threatened to undo her. Tendo, now sensing the tension more deeply, turned his small face toward his mother's neck and buried himself there, fussing softly. His tiny fingers clutched her wrapper with surprising strength. Mirembe kissed his forehead, grounding herself. In the only certainty she had known in the past months, her child was her world. But the world she fled from had now found its way to her doorstep. Mirembe, Adekunle said again, softer this time, as though the syllables themselves were fragile. Please, just let me talk to you alone. Give me that much. Her heart thundered painfully. Alone with him, the thought felt suffocating, terrifying, like stepping willingly back into a fire she worked so hard to escape. Mama Rhoda seemed to sense this instantly. She lifted her chin and spoke with the authority of a queen. No, she is not ready for that. Adekunle closed his eyes briefly. I understand, he swallowed, but please allow me to explain why I came. He turned slightly so the villagers were not staring directly into his brokenness. His voice shook, but he continued. I have spent every day since that night trying to find her. Every morning I check the roads. Every afternoon I visit villages. Every night I pray for a sign, anything to tell me she's alive. He wiped at his face, roughly embarrassed by his own tears but unable to control them. I have lost sleep. I have lost weight. I have lost myself. My business is collapsing. My home feels like a grave. And every time I close my eyes, the only thing I see is the storm and her silhouette walking away because of me. Mirembe felt her chest tighten as memories surged like waves. Thunder, cold rain, desperation in her voice. His refusal to believe a single word. Adekunle took a shaky breath. I want you to know that I know the truth now. I know the picture was fake. I know Seifu lied. I know I was manipulated. But most of all, he looked directly at her, and the pain in his eyes was undeniable. I know I failed you. Mirembe felt her knees weaken. It took every ounce of strength not to fall apart. Adekunle continued, I was blinded by fear, jealousy, and pride. I thought I was protecting myself. But I was destroying you, destroying us. Mirembe clenched her jaw, fighting the emotions clawing their way up her throat. Your fear destroyed an innocent life inside me, she said quietly. You chose lies over the woman carrying your child. His shoulders sank as if the weight of his shame was crushing him. I know, and I will regret it until I take my last breath. He took a hesitant step forward, but Mama Rhoda stepped in front of him like a guardian spirit. Do not push her, she warned. He nodded quickly, stepping back. I'm sorry. The sincerity in his voice made the villagers shift uncomfortably. Some felt sympathy, others suspicion, but all felt the raw truth in his words. After several long moments, Mirembe finally spoke, voice trembling but steady enough to cut through the air. If you have found the truth, why did you come here? What do you want from me? Adekunle looked at Tendo again, then immediately looked down as if the sight alone was overwhelming. I came because I needed to see you alive, he said. Because I needed to ask for your forgiveness, even if you never give it. His voice cracked. And because I wanted to meet my son. A strangled sound escaped Mirembe's lips, half fury, half sorrow. She held Tendo more securely. You think you can walk in here after everything you did and ask to meet him? Adekunle exhaled shakily. No. I don't expect you to trust me. I don't expect you to welcome me. All I'm asking is for a chance. A chance to prove that I can be better. Tendo peeked up at the sound of his father's voice, blinking curiously. Something in that small gesture broke Adekunle further. If I could take back that night, he whispered, I would trade everything I own. Every house, every business, every shred of wealth, just to erase the pain I put you through. Mirembe's throat tightened until she could barely breathe. Words don't change what happened. I know, Adekunle replied, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn the right to speak them. Mama Rhoda looked between them, reading the unspoken truths woven between their shattered hearts. She touched Mirembe's arm gently. Child, she murmured, you must decide if your heart still has room for healing. Mirembe shook her head. I don't know what my heart has room for anymore. Then give it time, Mama Rhoda said. Adekunle's shoulders fell, but he nodded. I'm not here to force anything. I'll stay in the next village for as long as it takes. If you wish, I'll leave, but I won't go far. Not until I know you and the child are safe. Mirembe swallowed hard. I don't need you to save me anymore. I know, he said softly, but I need to try anyway. The words lingered between them like smoke. After several moments, Mirembe turned toward the hut. I'm going inside. Adekunle didn't move. He only lowered his head, accepting the small mercy that she hadn't told him to disappear forever. Just as she was about to enter the hut, he said quietly, but clearly, thank you for keeping him alive. Something inside her cracked. She faced him one last time, tears shining in her eyes. I kept him alive because he deserved a chance at life. Not because of you. Adekunle nodded, tears falling freely. You're right. Then she entered the hut, Tendo clutching her neck. Mama Rhoda stayed behind, observing Adekunle with narrowed eyes. You have mountains to climb, Adekunle, she said, and none of them will be easy. He wiped his face, voice barely a whisper. I don't care how long it takes. Mama Rhoda studied him for a long moment. Then prove it. With that, she turned and followed Mirembe inside. Adekunle remained in the clearing long after they disappeared. He stood there, wind rustling his clothes dust settling around his shoes, the heavy weight of his past anchoring him like chains. But somewhere deep in his broken heart, a spark ignited. The spark of a man willing to fight for redemption. He took a deep breath and whispered to the empty air, I will earn my family back, even if it takes a lifetime. Little did he know this journey would expose secrets far darker than he ever imagined. Secrets that would topple everything he believed. Secrets that would bring his greatest enemy to light. And the first crack in that truth was already forming. For on the road he had traveled earlier that morning, someone else had seen him. Someone who did not want him finding Mirembe. Someone whose lies were now unraveling. And that someone was preparing to strike back. Night deepened around the village like a velvet curtain, and with it came a strange stillness. Crickets chirped, wind rustled the grass. But beneath the surface, something else stirred, something sharp, calculated, dangerous. Sefu. He had followed Adekunle that morning, tailing him from a distance like a shadow that refused to die. The moment he heard Adekunle ordering the driver toward remote villages, a sliver of panic stabbed through his gut. If Adekunle found Mirembe, everything Sefu had built, the lies, the manipulation, the hope of seizing the company would crumble to dust. No, he had whispered to himself. That cannot happen. Not now. So he followed, careful to stay out of sight. And when he saw Adekunle's car stop near the small settlement, fury twisted inside him until it festered into something violent. Now, hours later, he crouched behind a cluster of trees at the edge of the village, watching the flickering firelight outside Mama Rhoda's hut. His breathing was ragged with rage. His eyes were wild with obsession. After everything I've done, you still choose her, he hissed under his breath, his voice dripping venom. He knew that mark. He knew what it meant. The child, the heir, was alive. And if Adekunle reunited with them, he would never lose control of the company. Sifu's dreams of power would die instantly. I will not let her win, he growled. He returned to his car, pulled out a small phone, and dialed a number. Prepare the documents, he whispered. I may need insurance. His plan, dark and festering, had begun to take form. Inside the hut, Mirembe laid Tendo gently on the soft mat where he usually slept. The fire burned low, casting warm shadows across the walls. She brushed her fingers across his cheek, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. Her heart felt torn apart, stitched back together, and torn again, all within the span of a single day. Mama Rhoda approached with a steaming cup of calming tea. Drink, she urged. Your spirit is shaking. Mirembe accepted the cup with trembling hands. Mama, why now? Why did he find us now? Because destiny does not run on our fear, child, Mama Rhoda said. It runs on truth. I don't know if I can face him, she admitted. Every time I look at him, I remember the storm. I remember the pain. I remember the door closing in my face. You survived that storm, Mama Rhoda said. You survived betrayal. And you gave birth to a child who will change the course of many lives. That is strength. But what if I'm not strong enough to forgive him? Mirembe whispered. Mama Rhoda touched her hand. Forgiveness is not the first step. Truth is, you cannot walk forward until you face what broke you. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know which truth is worse, the truth that he believed lies about me or the truth that I still love him. Mama Rhoda sighed gently. Love does not disappear because someone fails you. But love also does not excuse their failure. Mirembe nodded slowly, understanding sinking deeper than the tea's warmth. She took a sip, letting the heat steady her breathing. Then with a voice almost too soft to hear, she asked, What do I do now? You give him a chance to speak, Mama Rhoda said. Not for him, but for yourself. Closure is not a gift to the one who wronged you. It is the key to freeing your heart. Mirembe lowered her gaze, brushing Tendo's tiny arm. I don't want him to hurt us again. That is why I will stand beside you, Mama Rhoda promised. A long silence stretched between them. Outside, the wind picked up again, howling softly, as though warning the village of the storm approaching, not a storm of rain, but one of truth, revenge, and destiny intertwined. Adekunle spent the night in the village square, refusing the villagers' offer to sleep indoors. He wanted to suffer. He wanted to endure discomfort. He wanted to show, if only through pain, that he no longer placed himself above those around him. He sat on the ground, knees drawn up, staring at the hut where Mirembe and Tendo slept. His heart ached with an intensity he had never known. He whispered to himself, How could I have been so blind? His driver approached timidly. Sir, we should head back. You need rest. No, Adekunle said. I'm not leaving until she is ready to speak to me. But sir, I said no. His driver nodded and retreated, sensing that this was not a battle he could win. Adekunle lowered his head into his hands. Pain radiated through him like a fever, emotional, mental, spiritual. He had been a king in his world, a man of power, wealth, reputation. And yet here he was broken and humbled, begging for a chance to repair what he had destroyed with his own hands. For hours he sat in silence. Eventually, exhaustion pulled at him. He tilted his head back, staring up at the stars. If there is any mercy left for me, he whispered, please, let her heart not harden completely. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen by either man or spirit, Seifu watched with cold fury burning in his veins. Dawn crept across the sky, painting the horizon shades of peach and gold. Roosters crowed and villagers began emerging from their huts to start their morning routines. Adekunle had barely slept, maybe an hour if that, but he forced himself to stand as he saw movement near Mama Rhoda's hut. Mirembe stepped outside. She stood straight, her expression guarded but steady. Her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, but her beauty, her quiet, resilient strength, shone with a clarity that nearly stole his breath. She looked at him. He froze. Then she spoke, voice level, but filled with the weight of everything unsaid. Come, we need to talk. His heart jolted violently. He nodded and followed her behind the hut where the trees offered privacy. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind toyed with loose strands of her hair. Adekunle swallowed hard, searching for words big enough to carry his remorse. But she spoke first. You hurt me in ways I never imagined you could. He winced as if struck. You didn't ask me. You didn't trust me. You didn't defend me. Her voice trembled. You believed a lie over the woman you claimed to love. Mirembe, he whispered, voice breaking. She raised a hand sharply. Let me finish. I fell silent immediately. You threw me out into a storm pregnant with your child, she said. And if Mama Rhoda hadn't found me, I could have died. Tendo could have died. Adekunle's knees nearly buckled. I know, he whispered, his eyes filling. I know, and I will never forgive myself. And then she continued, you spend months searching. You come here with apologies and guilt. She shook her head, tears building. Do you think that erases the pain? No, he said quickly. Nothing can erase it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I expect nothing. I need a chance to prove I am no longer that man. Mirembe bit her lip, overwhelmed. He stepped forward a little, not close enough to touch her, but close enough for his voice to drop to something fragile. Mirembe, he said, I love you. I never stopped. And I love our son, my son, even though I don't deserve him. A single tear slid down her cheek. She looked at him with a mixture of heartbreak and sorrow. I don't know what I feel anymore, she admitted. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can forgive you. But Adekunle looked up, hope flickering. I know that Tendo deserves to know his father. He exhaled sharply, tears slipping down his cheeks. But she added firmly, you will not come near him until I decide it is time. I accept, he whispered immediately. And you will not force your presence, your money, your power, or your guilt on us. I won't. And if you hurt us again once more, even by mistake, you will never see either of us again. He bowed his head. I swear I will never hurt you again. She studied him, really studied him, and for the first time she saw it, he wasn't the man who cast her into the rain. Not anymore. That man had died in the storm of his own guilt, but the road ahead would not be smooth. Because even as she took a shaky step toward rebuilding, chaos simmered on the horizon. Sefu was not done. And the next blow he would strike would be far deadlier than lies. The air behind the hut felt heavier than the morning mist, thick with unresolved emotions, tangled histories, and the fragile threads of second chances. Adekunle stood silently after Mirembe's words, letting them settle into his bones like a judgment he wholeheartedly accepted. He didn't reach for her. He didn't try to defend himself again. He simply nodded with the humility of a man who had finally learned he had no right to demand anything. I will respect every boundary you set, he whispered. Mirembe inhaled shakily. Good, because this isn't forgiveness. Not yet. It's just a beginning. The beginning of what neither dared to say. Before they could continue, Tendo's sudden cry pierced the quiet. Mirembe instantly turned toward the hut, but Adekunle instinctively stepped back, reminding himself he wasn't allowed near yet. I'll go, she murmured and hurried inside. The moment she disappeared, Adekunle released a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He leaned against the trunk of a tree, eyes closing briefly as exhaustion washed over him. Every muscle in his body ached. But beneath the ache, beneath the guilt and the heartbreak, something else flickered: hope. Fragile, small, but alive. Mirembe entered the hut and found Tendo squirming on the mat, arms reaching upward, calling for her with soft whimpers. Oh, my sweet one, she whispered, lifting him and cradling him close. His tears dampened her shoulder. She kissed his forehead, calming him with gentle rocking. Behind her, Mama Rhoda watched silently, her wise eyes flicking between mother and child. He heard you, Mama Rhoda said quietly. Even at his age, a child feels their mother's fear. I wasn't afraid, Mirembe said automatically, then paused. No, I suppose I was. Mama Rhoda approached and placed a hand on her back. Fear does not mean weakness. Fear means something precious is at risk. Mirembe closed her eyes, absorbing the words. I don't know how to make the right decision. Every choice feels like a path toward danger. Not every path leads to danger, Mama Rhoda replied. Some simply lead to truth. And what if the truth hurts? Mirembe asked. Then it means your heart is still alive. Outside, Adekunle remained under the tree long after the villagers dispersed to continue their morning routines. Some gave him cautious glances. Others watched with curiosity or judgment, but he ignored them all. His mind replayed every moment with Mirembe, every expression on her face, every tremble in her voice. He knew reconciliation wouldn't happen overnight. Maybe not even in months, maybe never. But he wasn't leaving. Not until she dismissed him permanently or called the authorities. Not until she told him explicitly that he had no place in their lives. He would respect whatever she decided. But he wouldn't abandon them again. Not now that he knew the truth. While he stood lost in thought, footsteps approached from behind. He didn't turn. You should eat, Mama Rhoda's voice said firmly. He opened his eyes, startled. She held out a small wooden bowl of warm porridge. Nothing fancy. Nothing like the gourmet meals he was used to, but there was kindness in the gesture. I don't deserve this, he said quietly. Deserving has nothing to do with hunger, she replied. He accepted the bowl with both hands, bowing his head slightly. Thank you. Mama Rhoda studied him with an unreadable expression. You are a man walking with regret. Regret can either humble a man or destroy him. He swallowed. I intend to let it humble me. Mama Rhoda nodded. Then perhaps there is hope for you. Hope. The same word that flickered faintly in his heart. She continued. But do not mistake humility for access. She is not ready to let you close, and you must not push. He nodded earnestly. I won't. Good. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. There is danger coming. Adekunle frowned. Danger. Yes. Her voice grew grave. I do not know from where yet. But something stirs in the shadows. Something connected to you both. A chill snaked down Adekunle's spine. Sefu. Mama Rhoda nodded slowly. The name carries darkness. Adekunle's hands clenched. I'll protect them, whatever it takes. Mama Rhoda looked at him again, and for the first time she saw a reflection of truth in his eyes. You will have to, she said simply, because he is not finished. The day passed slowly. Mirembe spent most of it indoors, trying to process everything that had unfolded. Adekunle stayed near the village square, always in sight, but never approaching the hut unless invited. As the sun descended, staining the sky orange and crimson, Mirembe stepped outside with Tendo. She stood near the edge of the clearing, watching the horizon with a heavy heart. Adekunle noticed her immediately but remained still, not wanting to overstep. After a few moments, she spoke without turning. "You can come, but keep your distance." His throat tightened. He approached slowly, stopping several paces behind her. Tendo looked at him again, curious, thoughtful. Babies recognize much more than adults assumed. Something about the stranger watching him seemed familiar to him in ways he couldn't understand. "He looks healthy," Adekunle said gently. "I took care of him," she replied, her voice calm but laced with pain, "even on nights when I wasn't sure I would survive another hour." Adekunle shut his eyes, grief slicing through him. "I know I don't deserve it, but thank you." "You're right," she said. "You don't deserve it." He flinched, but she continued, "But you're here, and that counts for something." He opened his eyes slowly. "I will stay as long as you allow." She nodded. "Good." Silence fell again, but not as heavy as before. Something in the air felt shifted. Not healed, not even close, but shifting. "Did you ever imagine this?" she whispered. "That one day you'd be standing in a small village, begging for forgiveness." "No," he admitted. "I imagined us raising a family in our home. Laughing, growing, living in peace." Her jaw tightened. "You destroyed that dream." "I know," he whispered, "and I will rebuild it from dust if you let me. Or I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you two have whatever you need, even if it's without me." Her heart twisted painfully. She turned to face him. "I'm not promising anything, but I am willing to see who you become." He felt tears sting his eyes. "Thank you. But understand," she added, "your presence alone does not erase the past." "I know," he repeated. "I am willing to earn every step of trust, even if it takes forever." Her eyes softened, just barely. "Then we begin with boundaries. I accept all of them. And with patience, I have nothing but time. And with effort, I will give everything." She hesitated, then extended one finger toward him, "Nothing more, nothing less." "Your first step," she said quietly, "is to earn the right to hold your son." Adekunle's breath caught. He stared at Tendo with longing so deep it felt like agony. "I will," he whispered. "I swear I will." Tendo babbled and reached out toward Adekunle, tiny fingers stretching, curious, unafraid. But Mirembe gently pulled his arm back. "Not yet," she murmured. Tendo pouted. Adekunle did not complain. He simply whispered, "I'll be here when he's ready." But as night settled once more over the village, a pair of eyes watched from the darkness. Sefu. His lips twisted into a vicious grin. "So the little family is reunited," he hissed. "Let's see how long it lasts." He stepped back into the shadows, pulling out his phone, the screen glowing with the evidence he planned to use to tear them apart once more. "If truth won't break them," he whispered, "then lies will." And the next blow he planned would not just target Mirembe or Adekunle. It would target Tendo. The storm was far from over. The night pressed thick and heavy over the village, and while many slept soundly, the air carried an unusual tension like a breath held too long. Inside Mama Rhoda's hut, the fire dimmed to glowing embers, casting red shadows across the walls. Mirembe lay beside Tendo, who slept curled against her chest. His small breaths warmed her skin. For a moment she felt safe. She felt still, but sleep would not claim her. Her mind churned with questions about Adekunle, about forgiveness, about the child who was too innocent to understand the war unfolding around him. A soft knock startled her. She sat upright instantly. Mama Rhoda, already awake, moved to the door with a calmness that belied the sharp alertness in her eyes. She opened the door a sliver enough to see Adekunle standing outside with a lantern in hand. His face looked drawn, exhausted, but earnest. "Forgive me for disturbing you," he whispered. "May I speak with you, Mama, privately?" Mama Rhoda studied him for a long moment, then stepped outside. She closed the door behind her. Mirembe pressed her hand over her heart. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the thin walls carried their voices to her clearly. "What is troubling you so late?" Mama Rhoda asked softly. Adekunle exhaled shakily. "There is something you must know. Something I fear will harm Mirembe and the child if I don't act." Mirembe's stomach nodded. "Sefu," he continued, "is dangerous. More dangerous than I realized. And I believe he followed me here." Mama Rhoda went still. "What makes you think this?" "I saw a vehicle several miles back on the road," he explained. It stopped whenever I stopped, moved whenever I moved, and disappeared when I approached the village. Mama Rhoda frowned. Are you certain it was him? No, Adekunle admitted. But I know the feeling of being hunted. And he has the most to lose if the truth about the forged evidence becomes public. Mama Rhoda's voice sharpened. Then you must be cautious. If he is nearby, he is not here for good. A thick silence followed. If anything happens to them, Adekunle whispered, voice cracking, I will never survive it. Mama Rhoda softened. You cannot protect them with fear alone. You must move with wisdom. I will do whatever it takes, he said, even if it means standing between them and danger myself. Mirembe's breath caught. His voice was sincere, too sincere, and despite her determination not to feel anything, something warm flickered inside her chest, something she fought hard to extinguish. But the danger was real, and the next morning would prove exactly how real. Morning light spilled into the hut, and the village stirred with its usual rhythm, women carrying water pots, children chasing goats, men sharpening tools before heading to the fields. Yet an unease hung in the air. Mirembe felt it the moment she woke, a heaviness, a shift. Tendo, usually cheerful in the morning, clung to her more than usual. When she tried to set him down, he whined and reached back for her. She kissed his cheek reassuringly. It's all right, my little lion. But she didn't feel it was all right. Adekunle waited near the edge of the village, not wanting to intrude but visible enough in case she needed him. He stood tall, but his eyes scanned the forest edges with anxious vigilance. Mama Rhoda approached him. You haven't slept. I will sleep later, he replied. Right now I need to be alert. Mama Rhoda's eyes softened slightly. Your heart has changed. Pain can carve men into monsters or into protectors. It seems you chose the latter. Adekunle bowed his head. I hope so. By midday, villagers gathered for market day, a bustling mix of chatter, laughter, and bartering. Mirembe joined them, carrying Tendo in a sling across her chest. She sold woven mats she'd finished the night before, smiling gently as buyers complimented her craft. For the first time in a long while, she felt almost normal. But normalcy shattered in an instant. A commotion erupted near the entrance of the village. People gasped. Others stumbled backward. A woman screamed. Mirembe spun around quickly, fear ripping through her. And then she saw him. Sefu. He stood in the middle of the dirt path wearing an expensive suit dusted from the village road, but his expression radiated arrogance and triumph. Oh, dear God, Mirembe whispered, clutching Tendo tightly. He smiled slow, cold, poisonous. Little cousin, he called mockingly toward Adekunle. You've been busy. Adekunle's blood ran ice cold. Leave. Now. Sefu raised both hands in mock surrender. What, I can't visit your new family reunion? I traveled so far. Mirembe stepped back instinctively, heart hammering. Sifu's eyes locked onto Tendo. Aha, he drawled. So this is the little star child. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Villagers murmured nervously. They could feel danger radiating from him. What do you want? Adekunle demanded, stepping between Sefu and Mirembe. What I want, Sefu laughed. I want what should have been mine. The company, the inheritance, the power. His expression twisted. But you ruined everything when you started looking for her. And now I have to clean up the mess myself. Mama Rhoda moved swiftly to Mirembe's side. Stay behind me, child. Mirembe's heart raced. Mama, he's looking at Tendo. I know, Mama Rhoda whispered. Hold him tight. Adekunle took another step. If you touch them, Sefu, I swear, you swear what Sefu cut in, smirking. You'll fight me. You think I'm here alone. He snapped his fingers. From behind the trees, two men stepped out, large, intimidating faces expressionless. Villagers gasped and backed away. Mirembe's breath caught. Tendo whimpered in fear. Adekunle tensed, anger flashing in his eyes. You brought men here, in this village, Sefu shrugged. I came prepared. I always do. What do you want with my family? Adekunle's voice dropped dangerously low. Oh, please, Sefu scoffed. Since when do you have family? Last time I checked, you didn't trust this woman or her bastard. Don't you dare! Adekunle roared, lunging forward. The guard stepped in front of Sefu, pushing Adekunle back. Villagers began shouting, rushing to protect their children. Chaos erupted. Sefu raised a hand, signaling calm, though his eyes gleamed with cruelty. I only need one thing, he said. Proof. Proof of what? Adekunle spat. Sefu pointed directly at Tendo. That the child is yours. Mirembe's blood froze. What, she whispered. Sifu smirked. If the child is truly yours, then he is the rightful heir. And that threatens everything. So I need to know. You don't get to demand anything, Adekunle snapped. But Sefu's grin widened. Oh, I think I do. He lifted his hand, revealing a small device, sleek silver, unmistakable. A DNA test kit. For a man like you, Cousin Sefu sneered, blood is everything. Adekunle lunged again, but the guards held him back. Mirembe clutched Tendo so tightly he whimpered in pain. You're not touching my son, she yelled, voice shaking with fury. Sefu arched a brow. Your son, he walked closer. Or his Adekunle struggled against the men restraining him. Get away from them! But Sefu's smile only widened. He leaned close to Mirembe, too close, and spoke with venom dripping from every word. If this child is the heir, then I'll make sure he never lives long enough to claim anything. Mirembe's heart stopped. Adekunle's scream ripped through the village. Mama Rhoda stepped forward like a storm. Move away from my child, she bellowed, slamming her staff into the ground. A shockingly powerful wave of presence radiated from her, as if the earth itself stood behind her. Sefu jumped back startled, but the damage was done. A line had been crossed. Threats had been made. And the truth this time could not stay buried. Adekunle broke free of the guards and charged forward, fury in every stride. You will never touch them, he growled. Villagers poured into the clearing armed with sticks and stones, forming a protective circle around Mirembe, Tendo, and Mama Rhoda. Sefu's smirk faded. The guards shifted uneasily. Adekunle stood in front of his family, defending them with his entire body. You want proof, he said, voice trembling with rage. You'll get it, but if you ever threaten my son again, I will bury you myself. Sefu stared at him, really stared, and realization flickered in his eyes. Adekunle had changed, radically, and that terrified him more than anything. He stepped back slowly. Very well, he said coldly. We'll do this my way. Then he looked directly at Mirembe. Run all you want, he hissed. Truth will find you. He turned sharply and walked away, his guards following him into the trees. The village erupted into shouts, fear, confusion, anger, but Mirembe heard none of it. Her heart was pounding too loudly. She met Adekunle's eyes, and in that moment both knew this was no longer just about forgiveness, it was about survival. And the truth that was about to explode would either unite them forever or tear their worlds apart beyond repair. Panic rippled through the village like wildfire. Mothers clutched their children, men shouted orders, elders whispered fearful prayers. But in the center of it all stood three figures, Mirembe, Tendo, and Adekunle, held together by fear, fury, and a destiny none of them could escape. Mirembe's arms trembled as she held Tendo close. His small body shook with sobs, face buried against her chest. She had heard threats before, cold words, whispered by jealous people, sharp insults from those who envied her, but none of them compared to the venom Sefu had unleashed. I'll make sure he never lives long enough. The words drilled themselves into her skull. Adekunle leaned toward her, voice low, trembling with urgency. We need to get inside. Now. Mama Rhoda stepped beside them, raising her staff to quiet the villagers. Everyone return to your homes. Lock your doors. No one walks alone tonight. The crowd hesitated, then slowly dispersed, leaving the three of them standing in the dust, hearts thundering under the weight of what had just occurred. Mirembe looked at Adekunle with wide, haunted eyes. He threatened my baby. Adekunle's throat tightened. He threatened our baby, and I will not let him near either of you again. He has men, she whispered. He has plans. He won't stop. I know. His voice was thick with guilt, so heavy that he almost choked on it. You brought him here. The words hit him like a blade. I didn't mean to, but you did, she said, stepping back. You led danger to us. Tendo whimpered, clinging to her tightly. Mama Rhoda touched her shoulder. Child, breathe. Fear makes the heart cruel. Let your words settle before you sharpen them. But Mirembe's chest was burning with a rage she hadn't let herself feel until now. You abandoned me in a storm once, she said. Tonight you almost let another storm swallow us again. Adekunle shut his eyes. I know, and I will spend my life making up for it. I don't need you to make up for anything, she snapped. I need you to keep my child alive. Adekunle opened his eyes, meeting her fierce gaze. And I will. I swear it. I will do whatever it takes. She looked away, swallowing her fear. We need to talk, inside. They returned to Mama Rhoda's hut. Once the door closed, the heaviness inside the room made breathing difficult. Mirembe paced with Tendo in her arms, whispering comforting words to calm him. Adekunle stood near the wall, pale and shaken. Mama Rhoda sat between them like a pillar holding the world together. Finally, Mirembe turned to him. What does he want? Adekunle rubbed his temples. Power, control. He wants the company. My father's legacy. Everything he believes he was denied. And he would hurt a child to get it, Mirembe whispered, horror twisting her features. Yes, Adekunle's voice cracked. He would. Tendo sniffled, and Mirembe kissed his cheek. Rage flared in her chest. He will not take anything from us, she declared. Adekunle nodded. We'll protect him. Together. But the word together slid between them like a fragile thread. Mirembe hesitated. I don't know if I can trust you. You don't have to, Adekunle said quietly. Just trust that I love him, and that I love you. Whatever comes next, I will not let him touch either of you. Her jaw tightened, but a trembling breath slipped out. Then what do we do? Mama Rhoda finally spoke. We prepare. Both turned to her. Sifu will return, she said. He is a snake he strikes when he thinks you're weakest. You must not give him that chance. Adekunle frowned. I'll call the police. Have security, no, Mama Rhoda cut in sharply. Bringing outside authorities here will only endanger the village. Then what you meet him on your terms, not his. Adekunle shook his head. He has men, he has resources, and you have truth, Mama Rhoda said. Truth won't stop bullets, Adekunle argued. It might stop him, she replied calmly. Darkness lives in secrecy. Expose it and it flees. Adekunle thought for a long moment. The DNA test. He wants proof. Mirembe stiffened instinctively, clutching Tendo closer. You're not taking his blood, she said sharply. Adekunle raised his hands in a calming gesture. I won't do anything without your permission. But if he's determined to claim that Tendo is not mine, then proving he is might strip him of power. Mirembe paced again. What if he tampers with the results? What if he lies again? Adekunle's jaw clenched. Then we do it publicly, with witnesses, with the village present, with cameras, no forged photos, no manipulated evidence. Mama Rhoda nodded. Yes, force the truth into the light. Mirembe looked conflicted, her fear warring with her desire to protect her child and end this nightmare. Finally, she whispered, I'll think about it. Adekunle didn't push. Take all the time you need. Tendo finally fell asleep in her arms. She laid him gently on the mat, covering him with a blanket. When she stood again, Adekunle's eyes were fixed on their son with a mixture of awe and devastation. He's beautiful, he whispered. He's mine, she replied quietly, and I will die before I let anyone hurt him. Adekunle looked at her, really looked, and nodded. You won't stand alone. She looked away, unable to meet the sincerity in his gaze. After a long silence, she said, You should rest somewhere else tonight. Not here. He nodded. I'll stay in the communal hut. I don't want to overwhelm you. Something about his gentle acceptance made her heart twist painfully. As he reached the door, she said softly, Adekunle. He turned immediately. Thank you for standing in front of us today. His expression shifted surprise, hope, gratitude. I will always stand in front of you, he said. Then he stepped outside. The door closed behind him. Mirembe watched him through the tiny window. He crossed the clearing and entered the communal hut, shoulders heavy but determined. Mama Rhoda stepped beside her. He is trying, child. Yes, Mirembe whispered. But trying does not erase the past. No, Mama Rhoda said gently, but sometimes trying is the beginning of something new. Mirembe's eyes drifted back to Tendo. All I want is for him to grow up safe, loved, protected, and he will, Mama Rhoda assured her. But Mirembe's voice trembled as she whispered, What if Sefu comes back? Mama Rhoda looked out at the horizon as if reading the winds of fate. He will, she said. And when he does, the truth must be ready. Mirembe closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be the first step toward a war she never wanted. A war for her child, a war for her future, a war for the truth. And she was no longer the woman who walked into the rain that night. She was stronger, and she was ready. Dawn broke with a strange stillness, too quiet, too tense, like the world was holding its breath. Fog curled low around the village, wrapping the huts in pale gray ribbons that shifted with the breeze. Birds perched silently on branches as if sensing something was coming. Something heavy, something inevitable. Inside Mama Rhoda's hut, Mirembe sat awake long before sunrise. Sleep had abandoned her the moment she closed her eyes. Her mind replayed Sefu's threat over and over again until her hands shook and her breath turned shallow. Tendo stirred beside her, making small, sleepy sounds. She stroked his tiny palm. I will protect you, she whispered. With everything I am. She didn't know what the day would bring, but she knew it would decide everything. A knock sounded on the door. Her heart leapt into her throat. Mama Rhoda opened it slowly. Adekunle stood outside, eyes shadowed but alert. He looked as though he hadn't slept at all. Mama, he said quietly, it's begun. Has he shown himself again, she asked. No, Adekunle replied. But I found these. He held up a handful of torn branches and crushed footprints. Fresh tracks, Adekunle said. Someone was near the hut last night. Close, watching. Mirembe hugged Tendo close. Panic surged through her veins. He's stalking us, she whispered. Mama Rhoda nodded grimly. Then today is not a day for fear. It is a day for decisions. Adekunle approached cautiously, keeping his distance. Mirembe, I know you're frightened. I am too. But we cannot wait for him to strike first. If we do nothing, he will come for the child. She felt her knees weaken. What do we do? Bring him into the open, Adekunle said. Make his lies impossible to deny. By giving him the test he wants, she asked. Adekunle hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but on our terms, in front of the village, in front of witnesses. So he cannot twist the truth again. Mama Rhoda looked at Mirembe. It is the only way to strip away his power. Mirembe's breath trembled. She looked down at Tendo. He blinked sleepily, unaware of the danger he represented. Her son deserved safety, deserved peace. And as long as Sefu's doubt existed, danger would remain. She lifted her chin steadier now. Then we do it. Today. Adekunle exhaled in relief, yet he didn't allow himself to step closer. I will arrange the gathering, he said softly. And I will stand wherever you ask me to stand. She nodded once. Not near me, she said. Not near Tendo. Not yet. He lowered his gaze. I understand. By mid-morning, word spread through the village like wind through dry grass. Villagers gathered in the clearing, murmuring anxiously. Some had heard Sefu's threats. Others had seen his armed guards. All knew a confrontation was coming. Mama Rhoda stood tall at the center staff planted firmly in the ground. Beside her was a long wooden table. On it lay the test kit Sefu had dropped the day before, but now there were 2 additional kits sealed and untouched. We used 3, Mama Rhoda said. 1 chosen by him, 1 chosen by us, 1 chosen by the village elder. No room for tampering. Adekunle nodded. Agreed. Mirembe approached slowly, Tendo resting in her arms. Every villager parted respectfully as she passed, forming a protective circle around her. Their presence made her feel stronger, not alone. Her eyes scanned the tree line. Will he come? She asked. He will, Adekunle replied. A serpent always returns when it smells blood. As if responding to the words, a low engine rumbled in the distance. The villagers stiffened. Moments later, Sefu stepped into the clearing with the same smug confidence he wore the day before. But today, there was something else in his eyes. Desperation. Behind him stood his 2 guards, armed and expressionless. Well, well, Sefu drawled. Quite the audience. No one responded. Mama Rhoda lifted her chin. You wanted proof. We will give you proof, but not in the shadows, not in lies. In truth, Sefu smirked. Truth. You people believe in truth. He glanced at Tendo, eyes darkening. Mirembe stepped back instinctively. Adekunle immediately moved to block Sefu's view, positioning his body as a barrier. He wasn't allowed near his son, but he would not allow danger near them either. Sefu laughed. Oh, cousin, look at you, playing the hero. Adekunle's jaw clenched. Let's get this done. Mama Rhoda gestured to the table. Choose 1 test. Sefu stepped forward arrogantly and picked the central kit. Of course, he said. I have nothing to hide. Neither do we, Adekunle replied. The elder stepped forward next and selected another kit. The third was placed in Mama Rhoda's hands. Sefu crossed his arms. Then give me the child. Mirembe's entire body tensed. She clutched Tendo protectively and shook her head violently. No. You want the truth, Sefu taunted. Then let me collect it. No, Adekunle snapped, stepping closer. You don't touch him. Ever. Sefu smirked. What afraid? I'll find out he's not yours. Before Adekunle could respond, Mirembe stepped forward, fire blazing in her eyes. You want a sample, she said. Then take mine. She grabbed a sterile swab from Mama Rhoda's kit, swiped the inside of her cheek, and placed it onto the tray. The child is mine, she said defiantly. And as his mother, my sample is enough. The elder nodded firmly. We compare mother and child first. If they match, he looked at Sefu with disdain. We proceed. Sefu's smirk faltered. This wasn't what he expected. Mama Rhoda collected the baby's cheek swab, next handling it carefully. The elder secured both samples. Step back, he commanded. Everyone obeyed. Minutes passed like hours. The village held its breath. When the results appeared, the elder lifted them with trembling hands. Mirembe is the mother, he announced. The villagers erupted into murmurs. Many already knew this, but hearing it confirmed seemed to rattle Sefu. He scowled. She was never the issue. The child is the problem. His father Adekunle stepped forward. Then test me. Mama Rhoda held out the father's kit. Adekunle reached for it. But before he could take it, Tendo suddenly stretched out his hand toward him and giggled. The sound cut through the tension like sunlight breaking through a storm. Adekunle froze, emotion flooding his face. His breath hitched because for the first time his child reached for him. Mirembe looked at her son, then at Adekunle. Something in her expression shifted, softened, but she didn't stop the test. Adekunle swabbed his cheek with steady hands. He placed the swab onto the tray. The elder collected it and prepared the final comparison. Silence suffocated the village. Even the wind stopped. Then the elder gasped softly. What is it? Mama Rhoda asked. The elder lifted the result sheet, his eyes wide. The child, he said slowly, voice trembling with awe, is unquestionably the son of Adekunle Afolayan. Gasps rippled through the villagers. Mirembe's heart pounded. Adekunle staggered back, a sob of pure relief escaping his chest. Tears streamed down his face. Sefu's face twisted. No, he snarled. No, this is a trick. This is manipulated. The elder glared at him. 3 tests, 3 witnesses, 3 seals. The truth stands. Adekunle straightened, eyes burning with righteous fury. Sefu, he said, voice low and dangerous, it's over. Sefu shook his head violently. No, no, He grabbed for his gun. Villagers screamed. Mama Rhoda slammed her staff into the ground. A deep echo thundered across the clearing like a shockwave. Adekunle lunged forward, tackling Sefu before he could aim. They wrestled in the dirt. Sefu fought like a man possessed, snarling, spitting, trying to claw free. Mama Rhoda shouted to the villagers, "Seize the guards!" Men rushed forward, overwhelming the 2 armed guards. Adekunle and Sefu rolled across the ground until Adekunle pinned him, fist at his throat. You tried to destroy my family, Adekunle growled. You threatened my son. Sefu spat in his face. I should have finished the job. Adekunle punched him once hard, sending blood spraying across the dirt. Then he stood, breathing hard. He looked at Mirembe. She looked at him, and in that moment, broken, bruised, terrified, they both understood something unspoken. This was not just revenge. This was closure. The guards were tied. Sefu was restrained. The villagers stood united. Mama Rhoda approached and placed her hand on Mirembe's back. The danger has passed, she murmured, but Mirembe shook her head gently. No, she said, looking at Adekunle and Tendo. The danger brought truth, and truth brought choice. Adekunle stepped toward her slowly, hesitantly, and whispered, Mirembe, I don't deserve it. But if you allow it, I want to rebuild our family. Her eyes filled with tears. Painful, honest, human. I am not ready to return, she said. I am not ready to be your wife again. Adekunle nodded, accepting. But she continued softly, I am willing to let you be a father. He lowered his forehead, overcome. Thank you. But it will take time, she said. Time, honesty, and repentance. He nodded firmly. You will have all 3. She looked down at Tendo, then back up at Adekunle with trembling resolve. You earn your place in his life, not with words. With actions, I will, Adekunle promised. Every day, Mirembe took a deep breath. And for the first time since the night she walked into the storm, her heart felt light. Her future felt possible. And the past, while not forgotten, no longer held her hostage. The villagers began dispersing, murmuring about justice and destiny. Mama Rhoda smiled knowingly. The storm brought you here, she whispered. Now let the calm guide you forward. Mirembe held Tendo close and nodded. Adekunle stepped beside them, not touching, not pressing, just being present. Quiet, respectful, hopeful. A family broken by lies, a future rebuilt by truth, and a journey just beginning.